Michael, we're seeing markets sell off around the news that COVID-19, also known as coronavirus, is spreading outside of Asia. Now, markets are down 3%, the Dow's down over 900 points. Why are we seeing this big sell-off today?
Well, first off, the fixed income markets and the precious metals markets have been somewhat responding to this for a few weeks now. I think the equity markets have finally caught up to the narrative that perhaps this virus is more severe or pandemic is more severe than initially thought, and they're repricing expectations for growth this year.
And how long do you see this economic impact playing out? Do you see it playing out over a quarter or 2 quarters?
Yeah, hard to say. Obviously no expertise in pandemics, but if you look at empirically how these things have played out, typically it's a couple quarters. I think in China, the authorities are getting a little bit more optimistic in some regions that they've contained it. However, on the negative side, now we're seeing some acceleration of cases in South Korea, Japan, Italy, Iran. So this is not finished yet. I would expect markets to be pretty volatile over the next little while as they try to get to grips with what this means.
I know when we talked to you last time in January, you said that the markets got a little bit overdone and that the sell-off was essentially a kind of resetting of expectations. Could we be seeing the same thing again? Yeah,
it was funny after that interview, the markets actually rallied a bit after that.
Yes.
But since now we're 4% off the highs. When we look at empirically how SARS played out, another 6% down would not be out of expectations. That would be a garden variety correction. And so I think we should be a bit more mindful. The narrative has changed. We're at the beginning of the year, we had the belief that we were at the early stages of an economic recovery. This event, which is very much a tail risk and outside of people's expectations, has derailed that for the time being. And so we're going to have a couple of quarters, very weak growth. Global supply chains are really, going to be under a lot of pressure because essentially nothing's getting produced right now. And it's going to weigh on the economic backdrop for 2020.
And talking about the economic backdrop, because we're already seeing that Europe is a slowing economy, is recession now back on the table?
Well, there are certainly some economic regions that have a lot less room for error than others. Europe would definitely be front and center of that. Italy is barely growing and will likely slip into recession. Same can be said for Japan. So there is going to be parts of the world that are going to be of poor, if not negative, growth this year. And other areas that have much more room to fight this, I would say North America is in a pretty good place. And I actually say the Chinese authorities have plenty of resources, both monetary and fiscal, to combat this. And so it'll be a year where you're going to see some degree of bifurcation of economies if different governments have different abilities to respond to this than others.
And any concern that there might be a knockoff effect in North America as well?
Oh, sure. I mean, certainly companies with supply chains, you saw Apple pre-release challenges with being able to get iPhones out of China, as well as a huge drop in demand for iPhones out of China. And so it'll be a case-by-case basis. Certainly companies that are, have their manufacturing and consumption all in the same place, well, be in the U.S. will be okay, but others that have much more of a global supply chain reach are going to be impacted by this, and it's going to take a few quarters for this to work its way through.
And finally, what's your final message to investors who might be rattled about this latest sell-off?
Well, you got to put it into context. Last year, equity markets gave you 30%. Last year, bond markets gave you 10%. And so it's, these things come and go. There will be more crises-like events in the future, but ultimately it's about setting your goals and your expectations and what it is you want to achieve and having a bit more of a longer-term mindset in investing rather than reacting to the day-to-day news flow you get from the press.
Michael, thank you very much for the insights.
It's a pleasure to be here.